Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I am one of your hosts, Sammy Kinnison, here with author extraordinaire Angela Belford, who is weeks away, days away, whenever you're listening to this, from the release of her second book, Traveling Light, Free Yourself from the Crap in Your Head. How are you feeling? You good? I know we keep asking this question, but sometimes you feel differently. I just want to check in. Checking in. How's your body? How's your mind? How's your emotions?
You're so funny because I was somewhere the other day and I was like, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I would have become the girl that beat the drum for feeling your feelings, I would have laughed in your face. So it's very interesting. It feels like I know it's not a hard pivot, which I guess we're going to talk about today, but it does feel so odd to feel like that's what I've become the feelings advocate. I'm the advocate for your body. So, okay, how am I feeling? Or do you want to respond to that? And then I'll tell you.
No. How are you feeling? I don't want you to feel like you're going to get to avoid the question. I want to know.
So how am I feeling? Well, so when we're recording this, I have the pleasure of being less than 24 hours post complete F-bomb meltdown. Praise God for good coaches. Because I was just super frustrated. The settings in the whole publishing process, my book got shipped early to several people. And the only reason that's bothersome to me is because that early manuscript, we were still finishing up letter from the author's daughter, my kind of about Angela. I have endorsements now from some lovely people. So that isn't in this. And everything online said you wanted to upload your final manuscript about 30 days out. And so here, when people are getting these early editions that don't have all those little sprinkles that I worked so hard on, it's just been more frustrating than I would like to admit. I literally was like screaming, I just want to be happy. Someone bought my book. It was printed and delivered to them. If you ask me, how do you want to feel? I want to feel happy. I don't want to feel upset. And so I had tried positive thinking. I did feel my feelings last week. It was a lot of disappointment. And I would say that the only thing that makes sense to my brain on why this is happening is that it is good for my empathy. Because, part of my process is that I walk people through the sensations in their body, and often they're unpleasant. Like, I have swirling in my stomach. It feels like there is an elephant sitting on my chest. Those are not pleasant. And as I get people to explore them, then I get them to the point where I'm like, okay, now we're going to express gratitude for that feeling. And I'm telling you, if you want to, most of my coaching appointments where somebody gets mad at me in the middle of coaching, it's because I tell them I'd like them to try to feel gratitude for this sensation that they have already told me is very unpleasant. And so it's good for me, for my empathy tank, to feel these not what I don't consider pleasant feelings. It's good for me to recognize, okay, clearly still need to work through some control issues. Okay, gonna work on that. So what I love is that at many points in the last 5 years, I would have made that mean. I would have thought in my head, oh no, you'd have no right talking about this because clearly you still are a mess. And so the fact that that voice doesn't even show up for me anymore is beautiful and amazing. And it's so hard to convey to people right now when I'm developing coursework around this material, when I'm developing keynote speeches around this material, all of those things, it's very difficult to say, this is how your life will be different, because peace looks different for different people. most of us don't walk around talking about the negative voices in our head all the time. We might to our friends. And so when you look at like business and work environments, talking about that is weird. And it may not look different on the outside. I mean, yes, I did lose weight, and yes, I have maintained that weight loss over a 2-year period. So that is the only physical manifestation that I have of this reduction in the negative voices in my head. So I'm doing good. I've
There
sold
you
a
are.
few copies. I
You
don't
sold
know.
what?
I've sold a few copies of my book. It's not a lot. It's not gonna make any bestseller list anytime in the next few days, but we still got a couple weeks. So
Yeah. I was like, you've actually sold close to 50 copies, not just a few. So
no, but with as much work as I put in at this point, it's very challenging. My inner critic definitely is tapping their foot in the corner of the room, going, I don't know why you bothered with all this. And I have to keep thanking them for their feedback. So anyway,
thanking them for their feedback and then reminding ourselves that 50 people who are impacted by this is pretty exciting, actually.
yeah,
It's actually a pretty exciting thing.
yeah.
So you kind of reference this a little bit in what you're just sharing, but I want us to dive into this a nugget of what you had before. You said that this is kind of you've tried positive thinking through some of your feelings. You also shared with me recently that you had a friend who told you, Angela, this is like the same thing that you've been saying for the past 20 years. I don't understand how this is any different than what you've been saying. So, what about traveling light and kind of this new idea of feeling your feelings, being the feeling your feelings advocate? How is this not just positive thinking? Tell me more. Isn't this just think better thoughts? Your thoughts create your feelings create your actions.
Well, I want to take us back to the book Be Freaking Awesome, where on the back cover I say, have baggage that keeps you from living, being freaking awesome. Beliefs you've held on to about who you could be. Don't worry, we'll cover that too. So clearly, I thought that I covered this in the first book. But what I would say is that over this time frame, the last few
Yeah, so
years,
when did you publish Be Freaking Awesome?
2017,
Okay, to now 2023. So 6
6 years.
years
Yep.
in this time frame.
Yep. And that one published like in September timeframe. So
You also though, I mean, like you started writing it before September of 2017. Like it
yeah, I would say I coined the phrase. I adopted the phrase. I didn't coin any. Nobody coined "be freaking awesome." But anyway, the first time I used it in a speech was actually in August of 2016, and yeah, had been grudgingly writing the book at that point. But I tried for a long time in the writing process to claim that Traveling Light is a prequel to Be Freaking Awesome. And everybody fought me and like, no, it's not. But in my
most
brain,
everybody.
I say everybody, but that's like people that were helping me, like editor people, coachy people, that sort of thing. So not everybody, but the people that were participating in the journey and guides on my hero's journey. But the reason why I think it is a prequel is because there is huge power in positive thinking. I'm still a huge believer, Think and Grow Rich, the power of positive thinking, all of those things. And many of us had things that happened to us at some point along the journey where we didn't complete our stress cycle of activated response back to homeostasis. And when those things happened to us, we decided this is how the world worked. I use the analogy in the book of like having headphones or sunglasses that are kind of tuned into a certain frequency. Barry has this very cool pair of sunglasses that are, I think they're rose colored, but you can't tell they're rose colored. When you watch the sunset looks purple. And so if he were wearing those glasses and he were telling all of us, wow, check out that purple sky. And we're all sitting there going like, you're out of your mind, kid. That is like an orange and pink sky. Like that is how he sees the world. And so in the same sort of way, the things that happened to us at some point in time caused us to put a colored layer on the glasses of how we see our life, literally our worldview. And so, and those aren't all bad, right? Like not all of them are bad. Some of those glasses, some of those layers of our glasses are like, look both ways before you cross the street. That's still a good one. Don't touch hot stoves. Still a good one, right? We need
Or
to choose.
even, I was like, to tie into the metaphor, I had a friend in college who was colorblind, and we all pitched in to buy glasses where that help people who are colorblind see color for the first time. Sometimes, well, maybe not just first time, but so sometimes our glasses can take the world from black and white into color. And I still remember to this day him putting on the glasses and then just starting to sob immediately that like there was so much color in the world. Sometimes it could it could be the opposite. If there's something within us that we also need help with, that lens can help us see the world with more color.
Yep, exactly. It's beautiful. And so we need to assess whether or not we can see the world in the way that we want to see the world. I mean, it's interesting you talk about colorblind because, I mean, there's some theories that are like, we just all learned that this is the
Oh my
name
gosh.
color.
I was hoping you were going to bring this up because this is like my weird existential, but like it doesn't really matter thought is like, what if green to me is something completely different than green to everybody else? And I would never know because every time somebody points at something and says, this is green, I'm like, we're all pointing at the same thing, even if we are seeing something different, even if what you were to come into my body, maybe what looks like green to me looks like orange to you. I don't know. I think about this way too often. I really need to like dial back. But that's true. We don't know. We just identify these are the things because someone's taught us this.
Right. And so I think that those lenses, some of them still serve us. And some of the time, if we were to imagine that maybe we're not wearing the same glasses all the time, and if we have a different pair of glasses, ooh, I should work out this metaphor before I share it. But I'm imagining that like if you have a box of glasses and a situation occurs and your body grabs that pair of glasses and puts on the glasses, and now this is how you need to see the world. And so maybe you don't need those glasses. Maybe you actually can just calm down your nervous system so that you don't need to put on the glasses to be able to function in the world. And so to me, what this book teaches is that it's okay and beautiful and lovely. And I'm a huge still believer in positive thinking. But when you choose positive thinking, and I know there are people out there that are about to get what I'm about to say, when you choose positive thinking and it doesn't work because the recurring thoughts keep going, and by not work, I mean like you have to burn a lot of self-control by choosing the positive thinking. You have to spend a lot of time actively choosing your thought. And you may still not feel good about that conversation. You may still not feel good about yourself. You may still beat yourself up, shame yourself, shit on yourself, all of those things. This book teaches you that you can maybe donate some of those glasses. Maybe you just can discard them. Maybe you don't need to grab them, and I probably shouldn't pick a new metaphor when I've used the luggage metaphor for the entire book, but the idea is that try positive thinking. And if it works to choose a new thought and to be like, I'm going to assume positive intent about my husband. And if that works, beautiful. That was an efficient tool and use it. Don't throw that. I'm not saying throw positive thinking out of your toolbox, But for me, and I've studied this for over 20 years, it got to a point where I was just frustrated with how much work positive thinking took, and how much self-control and how much of an energy drain. And I'm like, it has to be a better way. And so what I have found is that if I can complete some of these emotional loops and these cycles, then I don't need those protection, because that's all those are, right? Those are just protective glasses. Ooh, that would have been the best metaphor to use. Like, oh man, when I'm going to weld, or if I'm going to, whatever. Anyway, I should develop that metaphor before we went there, but
Yeah, I think we should workshop the glasses metaphor. We'll keep noodling around with it. I to give a personal example, but also kind of just like take it out of the metaphor and make it real life. Um, for me, an example of this is that I am recovering perfectionist. I have a I have previously had a hard time whenever I get constructive feedback, not taking that to mean something horrible about me and mean something that I'm not enough, or I usually it's that I'm not enough. And so I remember, like, in my previous job, if I would be told, Sammy, you need to work on these areas, like, I would go home pretty devastated that I'm not enough. And then it would be like, okay, well, choose a different thought. And then the next time I would be told, hey, you need to work on these areas. And I didn't get, if I wasn't able to choose another thought, if the thought I'm still not enough came up, and then it came up in my marriage, and then it came up somewhere else, and then it's, what's wrong with you, Sammy, that you can't just choose a new thought? Just get rid of that. Choose a new thought. Clearly something is now extra wrong with you because you can't choose a new thought to feel something different. I've done a lot of work. I've gone through your book. You and I have gone through some coaching. I've really been working on refining a lot of this. This week, when a client called me and yelled at me for something, one, I was like, I don't actually think that I messed this up. I feel like in some ways, they dropped the ball and are taking it out on me. This is annoying that they are yelling at me for it. It did not mean I'm not enough. It did not mean like all of these things. And anyway, it's just such an interesting place to be at, where when we are able to address that deeper side and that emotional side of things. I don't even know that I chose a new thought. I think my thought was not that great. My thought was, this is annoying. Probably could have chosen a different thought at that point, but I actually was able to get to a point of being like, wow, their nervous system is activated. They are dealing with something. Like when your mom tells you, like, they're just jealous of you, sweetie. My mom's never told me that ever once. I'm just kidding. She told me that a lot. Particularly in college, it'd be like, this person's probably being mean to you because they're jealous. I was like, I don't understand. Anyway, that's a whole different point. Um, I see you over there pressing your lips, keeping your comments to yourself.
Mhm.
Anyway, sometimes choosing another thought, if we're not able to do that, can lead to then the extra thoughts of what's wrong with me.
Yes.
What's wrong with you is that there's emotional cycle, was air quotes wrong with you, not for real wrong with you. You have real emotions and real things going on inside you, and that makes sense. And that is okay.
Well, let's talk about a couple of ideas that are pretty prevalent in society that we all kind of get. There's the idea of confirmation bias. So if you believe I'm not enough, then you are actually predisposed to accept what other people say as confirming your belief, right? So confirmation bias is working against you if you hold on to that belief, I'm not enough. And your reticular activating system, your brain loves to be right. And so it actually feels very dangerous for your brain to be wrong. And so this process that we are outlining in this book is really about unwinding that, all of those baggage, all of these beliefs, this toxic waste, so that you can change what is right, so that your brain still is going to work to be right, And you're going to be changing what is being confirmed. So we're still understanding that, if you buy a blue Honda, you're suddenly going to see more blue Hondas. When you change the belief from I'm not enough, which is not a cognitive experience, let's just be clear. You don't just get to decide, oh, that's not true. I am enough. I would love that. I've been teaching I am enough and I am capable for 25 years. If you don't address the emotions that are underneath that, it'll still keep that little weed is going to keep popping up in your garden. But what we're doing is that when we cultivate this new belief, when we clean out the emotions of the old belief and we put in the new belief, now we're going to use your reticular activating system. I call it the blue Honda thing in your brain, right? That is going to then now find evidence to prove that is true. And so that's what we're not advocating working against your brain and your body. As a matter of fact, I would say positive thinking in some ways tries to hack your brain. And I'm saying like work with it first, clear things out. It's like a closet, can't keep shoving stuff in. Like, let's clear some stuff out. Oh, let's just over metaphor this whole thing today. Sorry. Anyway, then you're still going to work with confirmation bias, but we're confirming a new belief about yourself. And then you are going to have to build the emotions around that as well.
So what would this look like for someone in the workplace, and how is this different than positive thinking?
That's a really good question. And it's one that I have been kind of wrestling with, because there's this element of personal development that trips over into your professional life. And I've been thinking a whole lot about how can managers and leaders like encourage people to kind of go on these journeys, because there's still legitimate HR concerns. There's still legitimate, ways that we have to act in a work environment. And so what I will come back to is that the emotions, these sensations that you're having, work can be a beautiful place to find the weeds that are in your brain, right? So if you have this person on your team that is completely activating you every time you're in a meeting with them, that's an indicator light. That is an opportunity for you to check in. I can tell you that the year that I spent in my office writing my book, I didn't have a lot of triggers. I didn't have a lot of people. I didn't have a lot of inputs of people that were actually triggering me and helping me identify my beliefs. And so sometimes I think we think that we want to do this, like, oh, we need to go on this meditation retreat. We need to go whatever. But you can glean a lot of information in the work environment about things that you need to work on. I, in this book process, figured out, still got some control issues that I need to work on. And so I think in a work environment, that's probably the thing that is going to be the safest for you, is to first use it for identification and awareness. And second would be to, I immediately went to like identifying toxic work environments. If you're in a work environment where you never feel safe, that's information that you can use for your good. There's so many things that are out of our control, from the way of like, you may or may not be able to change a toxic work environment, but if you can improve your own beliefs in yourself, it will help. Like, if you're going to have garbage inputs of people that are constantly judging you and constantly whatever, if you can reduce your own self-judgment, increase your self-love, increase your self-care, increase your ability to take care of yourself and to reduce those toxic beliefs, I think you'll be more resilient for a toxic work environment. Hopefully you can also, make better decisions. I also know that when I'm activated, then I take that out on other people. They become activated and they become activated. So if you can take responsibility for yourself and you're able to stay in a regulated state, then that's less dysregulation other people are dealing with, which could actually bring the temperature down in your work environment.
I think that's all great as well, but I have a different perspective of way that I think this will help people in their work environment. I think one of the beliefs that you talk about in your book is I trust myself. And when you don't trust yourself to take care of yourself, that can really impact a work life and a work world. And being able to get to a place where you can trust yourself to stand up for yourself and to hold boundaries and to look out for your needs. Sometimes I know that I have experienced and I have friends who've experienced that, like, to stand up for your needs can feel selfish in the work world to say, I am putting in these number of hours. This is what I'm willing to do. And this is where I'm not willing to budge. Sometimes that feels selfish. Sometimes that feels like, well, I'm going to put work on other people. And also, if you don't stand up for yourself, who will? No one else is going to be fighting hard for your career, for your boundaries, for your well-being as much as you can. And if you're relying on other people to stand up for you, at some point that will fail you. At some point that it's not going to be there for the needs that you have. And so your work satisfaction, I think, can improve dramatically. I think that, like, I would imagine there's going to be less burnout when you are not struggling to just be able to speak your needs, to be able to find value in yourself, to find that you're enough, to trust yourself. When all of those things happen, burnout is going to happen so much faster. And I don't want to sound like I'm implying that burnout is only a personal problem and that, like, leadership of organizations and managers don't have an influence on this, because they do. And also, you can stand up for yourself in these ways and you can be there for yourself. But if you don't know what it's like to be there for yourself in any type of situation, it's really hard to practice it in the very real world of work. It's not a metaphor, it's not a hypothetical. It has other impacts. It has financial impacts, it has social impact, it has all of this, like, hold within our life, which is not necessarily bad. It's not what I'm trying to say. And also, being able to be there for yourself in that situation can make a big difference and can really start to have, like, that ripple effect in your life of just more grounded, more satisfied, more fulfilled in situations, even if it's something that you don't love. And I think even when you're talking about that toxic work environment, you, the individual, we, the collective, like, have power over toxic work environments. Power to say, no, I'm not putting up with this. Power to walk away. It's like a job seekers market right now, or it's on the tail end of that. Like, there are opportunities, finding ways to say, this is what I'm willing to do and this is what I'm not willing to do. And I'm going to be okay with the consequences of that. I don't know. I think that that can make a really big difference for people.
So, yes, this episode is publishing just as all of our teacher friends are headed back to school. And so I'm hyper aware. And that's probably why I'm like caveating the crap out of this, is because I'm having all of those like end of summer hang out with my teacher friend lunches and dinners right now.
Mhm.
And there are degrees to which they standing up for themselves looks like not beating up on yourself. It looks like when people say terrible things, it may be going like, okay, they're throwing some of their emotional poop at me, and I'm just going to step aside and let them throw it. And it may not look like aggressively holding boundaries. it may be like saying, this person has said these words and I'm not going to take it on. That's their issue. It's just, I'm very concerned with our education system. I'm concerned that parents are not being there for teachers and like holding the line and holding teachers in a place of respect and teaching kids to respect authority. And does that go badly? Yes, it surely does. But I'm also very concerned. There are a couple of industries that I'm very concerned about. 25 years from now, I'm very curious about how we will have medical professionals, how we will have police protection, and how we will have an education system based on how we're treating people now. Like, why would you go into that career? You know, and I know people close to me that went to college to be a teacher, student taught for one semester, and then said, I can't do that. It's just awful. So that's why I want to just encourage teachers, um, and I've spoken at new teacher orientation for different organizations and or different, school districts, and would love to again. I just want them to know that we see you and we know that sometimes that toxic work environment, it feels like you can't walk away, like that would be detrimental. You probably are in this because you love the students, and the idea of just quitting your classroom in October does not feel legitimate and does not feel real, or you don't feel like that you can go easily get another job, or you're like 5 years out from retirement and you're like, I'm at an age where I need to finish out my retirement, and I'm going to have to be treated like garbage. I literally told a friend recently that I was like, she's like, I have 7 more years. And I go, you can't do this for 7 years. She goes, I know. And I said, but you can do it for 1 year. And that's all you got to do, honey. And some days you have to do it for one semester, and you may have to do it for one day, 1 week, 1 month. I think if we, which I say that in marriage too, I can't do this crap for the rest of my life. You can't, but you can do it for this, Alcoholics Anonymous, one day at a time. I just
So
wanted to,
what's interesting though is that I still think I agree with all of that 100%. The concern, the encouragement, the support. And if you are dealing with everything that the education system is right now, and it means something about you when a parent comes in with their anger and their fear, that is not going to serve you. I think
100%.
I was like, so yes, and
Yes.
when I say that I think this can change your work outlook and it can impact burnout, I still agree with that statement. I think it can definitely, you can go home and the way that everybody acts doesn't have to mean something about you.
Right.
It doesn't mean something about you actually at all. And we could get into a whole episode about education and all of the things and our speculations on it. One of the things that I try really hard, I have a sometimes unique and controversial approach to big heavy topics, and it's where is the it sounds controversial. Where's the common goal? And why are people approaching this the way they're approaching this? Why are parents being the way that they're being? And I don't think that's because teachers are being horrible at all. I I would theorize that parents have some fear that they are facing. For different people, it's going to be different things. And that fear is going to motivate them. They are going to go into fight, flight, or freeze, and they're probably going into fight. And who can I go fight to make them care about this thing that I care deeply about? And I don't know that that is leading to good results. And where can I skip past the fight and can I get to the heart of what it is that they're afraid of? Maybe not. And being able to see that. But I also think that if you and your own work can stay regulated, can be like, wow, this is annoying that somebody's yelling at me. I wonder why they're yelling. I wonder if I can get curious about it, if I can see past what is right here in front of me to try to get to that heart of that. That's where I think your book actually still really impacts everybody within this, is that when we are facing any hard situation and we're toting around huge luggage that's just going to explode at any moment, that's not serving us. I actually think it is a little bit about controlling the things that you can. Like individually, I was gonna say individually we can't change the system, but that also goes against my beliefs that one person can make a complete difference.
Yep.
Um, but there are things that you face that can feel completely out of your control. And what can you control? And you can control, as crazy as it sounds to some people and as hard as it can be, you can change your beliefs about yourself, and you can do that work, and you can choose your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors if we can first know ourselves and know this kind of deep down who we are. um I read a book recently that's a fantasy book. If you are wanting to read A Court of Thorns and Roses and haven't read it yet, skip past the next couple of like 30-60 seconds. This is a spoiler. There's this part of this quest that this girl has to find this mirror, and it's going to help them. They're like, if you find this mirror for me, then I will help you. And they said, to take it, you have to look into it. And that's it. And she's like, well, that seems dumb. And they said, every single person who's looked into this mirror has gone crazy or died. Period. The end. And she's like, well, how am I supposed to do this? That's not going to help me, like, go on this quest. She ends up facing the mirror. And what happens is that she sees herself, all of the good and all of the bad, everything about her. It comes to light in this mirror, all of the really deep, what feels ugly parts of us, and all of the really beautiful parts of us. And it is facing who we are and accepting who we are exactly as it is that allows her to sort of conquer the mirror, and she gets to take it. And I know that it's such a specific niche reference to this thing, but I continue to think about this with your book, that there is something about it that invites you to look at yourself and to say, this is all okay. And to look at the parts of you that don't feel like you're enough, and honestly to start with gratitude and say that's okay. Thank you for being here. And I think that can lead us to a place where we can reject sort of these negative beliefs about ourselves, and we can invite our inner critic to sit with us, not to be kicked to the curb, but you invite the good and the bad to all be there and be present, and to be able to move forward. And I don't know, that to me feels very different than positive thinking in general.
Yeah,
Uh,
and what's interesting, I think that there are times where it does sound the same.
mhm.
I think about yourself, get rid of negative beliefs, still just positive thinking. But I hope that that's what people get, is that it is different. And I advocated in Be Freaking Awesome that we needed to change our beliefs about ourselves. And I did believe when I wrote that book that you could just choose to believe a different thing, to dig out by the weeds and change your beliefs. And there are some beliefs that I have been successful at doing that. And if it is that simple, then do it for sure. If I believe that it's, scary to ride a roller coaster and I can just change my mind, absolutely try that first. But then if it doesn't work, then this is a methodology. The best compliment I've gotten so far on this book is people telling me that this feels like the guidebook for the work they need to do. And what I love about that is that people recognizing this is not a silver bullet. I don't
It's
propose,
not a life hack.
it's not a hack at all. And but it is a guidebook to go on your journey. I mean, that's why I start with the hero's journey. And so I'm I hope that people will explore. And if you are able to just decide to believe that you're enough and that works, do it. Just do it. Try it. And if it doesn't work, then cool. Here's another method.
I would bet if that works, If that has worked for you, you may not be listening to this podcast. I don't know. Maybe you
Sure.
are. Maybe you're just big supporters of us, and thanks for listening on our journey. And also, maybe it doesn't work for you.
Yep.
There is other ways. You're not hopeless. You don't need to be hopeless. There is something else. Angela, I want to ask one more question before we end and kind of wrap up. I have noticed throughout this episode that there's been a little bit you've been very careful with your words, lots of real intentional pauses and long and just thoughts on things. Um what's coming up for you right now that makes this a little bit harder than normal?
Some of it is like I mentioned at the beginning, having to just be reminded that it's not an easy journey. I one time had a visualization of that where I am today and where I want to go, whether that is want to go is like my next goal, the next step on my journey. Between me and there is this forest of pain and fear. And that as a coach, I feel like I've signed up to be kind of a guide through that, not kind of, but for real, a guide through that. And so I have found ways that I have been able to machete my way through my forest of pain and fear. And I never want to minimize anyone else's forest of pain and fear that they're facing, because it is different. And I just never want to like trivialize the experiences that they've had. I never want to give people the idea of, oh, it's so easy. Why don't you just all of that? I think I have inadvertently given that message for a long time. And so I want to just be very careful and very cognizant of the fact that this is, in some situations, in some scenarios, this process is simpler. I have said that if you are in significant crisis, if you don't have your basic needs met, if we go back to Maslow's hierarchy, you can't work your way to the top of the pyramid. And this is really working in a lot of self-actualization to a degree. There's some discussion about this is a lot about psychological safety, which is more of like the second level. But if you're in a situation, where you feel like it's life or death, or you feel like I'm not getting my basic needs met of food, shelter, and clothing, this stuff can feel like super overwhelming. And I'm aware of that. And I just don't want to ever make anyone, I don't want to add to the voice of shame in their head.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that with us. Sorry to put you on the spot with that question, but I don't know. Felt like
Yeah.
other people might be curious to know as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, like, especially those of you that are on the Traveling Light launch team, you've seen lots of high energy, and this process has been exciting and it's been fun. And I'm grateful for the people that have joined the launch team and that are on the party crew, and I'm writing my coursework, all of those things. So there's a lot of energy that typically comes, and I just am holding space today, especially for the idea that I think my heart is just hurting for my teacher friends that feel like they're just about to walk back into battle. And is my book primarily and specifically for teachers? No, I think, but there's lots of people. And why I'm heart heavy for teachers, but yet social workers didn't even get a couple of week break. I don't know. Social workers have a hard life. Emergency room nurses have a hard, like there's a lot of hard things in this life, but it's just really in my, just big in my windshield right now to kind of love on them in a way that affirms them and builds them up. And also, I am hopeful that somebody listening to this podcast might react differently to their kid's teacher, and instead of bringing all their fight, flight, or freeze energy at the teacher, that maybe we can figure out some better ways. Maybe we can teach kids to regulate their nervous system so that they're not activating everybody else around them. I think that as a society, spending 2 years in the pandemic, I think a lot of us need to complete some stress cycles, and so even if your stuff doesn't go all the way back to childhood, there's things that are being triggered because of the whole, 2 years of COVID. And so I think I'm just really hyper aware of that right now. I had hoped that people having to homeschool their kids during COVID would make them more kind to teachers when it was over, and instead, we just didn't ever regulate our nervous system, so we just keep taking it out on teachers, and it's getting dire out there.
Yeah, I know. Sharon Says So on Instagram has talked about how there is not like an army of teachers waiting in the wings to just step in whenever we've run off everybody there. It it's this is it. These are the
Yeah,
people. So
yeah, I mean, we've lost 500,000 teachers at least,
I think
and
before the pandemic there was a teacher shortage too in a lot of areas. So
yeah.
like didn't make it better. But I am somebody who is an eternal optimist, even when it feels like I'm being unrealistic. But I think that there are things that we can do. I doesn't. I hope that doesn't negate that things are hard now, and I can't let myself get to a place that there is no hope and there's nothing that can be done. So I'm gonna hold on to that. I'm gonna work with elected officials, nonprofits, all the people who are out there doing
Well,
work.
and I am encouraged to see so much school curriculum around social emotional learning, and I think back to when in the '80s when I was in school, and Just Say No to Drugs, and which mm,
Yes.
debate over whether or not that was actually effective, but I think about smoking, and we taught elementary school kids to peer pressure their adults about smoking, and it resulted in a lot of reduction in smoking. And so if we can equip kids with social emotional learning and teach them about nervous system and teach them about yoga and teach them about all these things, then they can take it home, right? And so if there is that is where my hope is that there's some great initiatives around teaching kids about what's going on in their nervous system. I mean, even the books, is it Spot books that talk about like what your emotions are and how you're feeling and how you behave when you're feeling these emotions. I think there is a lot of hope to be had. And but also like this generation, everybody can fuss about the millennials and now the Gen Z. There's so many cool things that you guys are willing to explore and willing to do that those of us that have been around for a long time, like that seems impossible. And so I think that there is hope. I don't mean to be without hope. So thank you for bringing us back to optimism.
I also felt like it was kind of a little bit of a downer moment to end on. So I wanted to lift us back up.
Yes.
You mentioned your launch team a moment ago. Even though like we are full pre-order mode, people can still join the launch team, right?
It
Some
can.
still neat. You can look back at some videos that we've had and some conversations. We've got some more like party events coming up. You to join the launch team, two things. One, pre-order the book, preferably from Amazon, who won't ship it to you until it's ready to be shipped. At this point in time.
No. You can order it from wherever you want. If you want to order bookshop.org so that you can support local bookstores, do it.
And if you want to order it from Amazon.com so we can stop sending Angela into this disappointment every time somebody says I got my book too early, you can do that too.
Work on herself.
Pre-order the book. That's really where we're at. Honestly, if you pre-order it, that sounds phenomenal. We love it. And if you pre-order it and then go to join the launch team at angelabelford.com, you can actually get an advanced digital copy. So you can start reading right now. You're like, I don't want to wait till August 29th. I want to read it today. This was so exciting. How can I start my journey right now? You start it now by pre-ordering, joining the launch team so you get the advanced digital copy. And then, or you can order it and then get your physical copy by August 29th. We'll also have our launch party, an international launch party on Tuesday, August 29th. And then we're going to have an in-person sort of pre-launch party on Monday, August 28th. So if you're interested in both of those, information is on angelabelford.com or imminently will be on angelabelford.com. We're so excited for you guys to continue to join us on our journey, to allow us the space that we're working things out, that we're talking through things. Hopefully our positive thinking evangelists did not find this too offensive or upsetting. We love you guys, and sometimes it's a little more than just positive thinking your way through a situation. I feel like I'm like a radio host, like running through all these things to wrap up the segment, but that's what we're doing today. Thank you guys for joining us and being with us. We hope you guys go and be freaking